Dear Diary.
Dear Diary.
Dear Diary, wow, today was a really hard day.
Dear Diary, I find sometimes my life can be hard.
Dear Diary, it will pass and it will be okay.
Dear Diary, I feel like today is going to be...
Shh, the Indigo Diaries. Dear Diary, welcome to the Indigo Diaries. First, let me introduce myself for people that don't already know. My name is Natasha Hickling, and I'm the host of this new podcast. Well, it's not really brand new anymore, called the Indigo Diaries. Thank you to everyone for coming in and listening. If this is your first time, then welcome. But if you're returning, then welcome back. I welcome all you Indigos to the first series, The World Through Our Eyes, and another episode with a brand new guest. I'm so excited for a new guest. I always express how excited I am and looking forward to the next one. Like everyone is my favorite, but that's just the spirit and the passion in me. So let me get on with this podcast and introduce our next guest. This guest, ever since I met her, she brought such joy to my screen in Indigo. She shows so much expression and sheer joy, but also in her way, she approaches life with so much passion and gives everything 100%. So I'm honored to have her share her diary here today. So let me introduce you to Jessica. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. Yay, I'm excited to be here.
So let me begin by telling you a bit about Jessica. Jessica is 29 and lives in Western Australia. Since little, she was drawn into storytelling and creativity. This led to her a career in the film industry, where for the most part, her ADHD brain naturally flourished. Currently, she works in casting as an acting coach and screenwriter for a youth film school. Despite the stereotypes of ADHDers, she actually loves reading, as well as writing, playing lacrosse, cooking, and music. Jessica was diagnosed with Combined Type ADHD only a few months ago, but she is looking forward to sharing her experiences so far. So, welcome, Jessica. I've already said that.
Thank you.
So in our pre-interview a few weeks ago, you mentioned that you've been listening. She's actually been doing some homework. I love the determination. And she's actually been listening to this podcast. And she shared some things that really dawned on her from listening to other people's story. I just wondered if you'd like to share that with us.
Can I firstly just say that the fact that I did homework, surely this proves that ADHDers can do homework if it's something you're actually passionate about and interested in.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So we're not lazy. We try when we're interested. Well, one of the things that I was noticing, and this wasn't across the board, but it was some, was that a lot of people found that they didn't have a good experience in school, or they didn't do well in school. Okay. And for me, I feel like that was my experience was the opposite, and that's kind of why I didn't get diagnosed for so long.
Okay. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So I was really lucky. When I was a kid, I had a best friend that I've known since I was a baby, and we were able to do, all those things that kids do together. Make plays, muck around. And so I carried that confidence, I think, of being myself and having somebody who's got my back into primary school, where I then found communities, and then I didn't feel maybe so different. I found I had a group of people that were kind of like me. And I was bright as well. Like I loved school, I loved learning, I loved reading books. And so I feel like if you looked on the outside, you'd be like, oh, that's just like a bouncy little kid. They read for long periods of time. So why, that surely they don't have ADHD. But I think I would like hyper focus on reading because I liked it so much. So I wouldn't, do anything else but read when I was reading. And to this day, I'm still the same.
I love that. I think that it's such a, variability, because some people love to read, some people don't. And it's just such a stereotype that people with ADHD don't like to read, but because it was an interest to you, your hyper-focus and the strength of ADHD kicked in. And then that's why it never got picked up. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, I read when I was going to get diagnosed that you should bring report cards in, and everyone was like, oh, my report card says I was lazy and unfocused and And I looked through mine and they were all like, oh, a pleasure to teach, da, 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 da. Which was so lovely, and obviously a privilege that I happened to kind of pass. But there was struggles.
Okay.
Like I was talking to my mum about it, and she was like, oh, I feel bad I never picked it up when you were younger. But I said to her, you enrolled me in alternative schooling, essentially. I did something called Kumon, which was alternative maths, because I wasn't doing that well in maths. And that way it was all timed, and there was rewards where you got fake money to buy. I remember I saved up for a sharpener. It was like a windy one. I was really excited about it. And so I was motivated to learn. And so where I had the brains for it, but not necessarily the traditional methods worked. My parents did provide some other forms, where I could keep up. And so I feel like I kind of, loved like primary school in that aspect, and kind of did pretty well.
So I think that's incredible. You hear it the other way, where parents try and push them to do the conventional way. So how do you think that kind of impacted you today?
I feel like that having that initial kind of confidence, like I knew I was a bit different, but it was a good thing, because I was into storytelling and creativity. Like that's main character energy right there, And so little me in my fantasy world, I was like, yeah, damn, I'm a bit different. That's okay. And I had people, on my side to back me up. My parents are so supportive. I did every hobby under the sun. And there wasn't a lot of judgment of like, oh, you're changing now. You've done 1 month of pottery, which you were terrible at. And now you're moving to clarinet. Like, okay, sure.
The jack of all trades.
Yeah, literally. So I feel like even as things got harder and I was able to mask it less, and, I struggled more, in high school and adult life, I feel like that still did serve me, because I bounced back quick. Like I do definitely still have that emotional regulation stuff, but I bounce back really quick. And so on the surface, it looks like I'm doing okay. And I do feel like that has kind of given me real like positive kind of baseline.
That's amazing. Usually it's like the opposite, like people have the negative and then they have to bring the positive. It's nice that so you said you find it a bit easier to bounce back. Is that still the same today?
I think so. And I don't know actually if it's particularly like mental work, or just because I get a bit bored being sad and then I forget about it. I'm like, oh, well, let's move on.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And it's definitely also been a curse. Like I struggled a lot in high school being taken seriously, I think, because I was bubbly and positive, and I'm very personal when I'm struggling, like a private. I keep it all, behind closed doors. Well, so it definitely, has a flip side, but for the most part, I was pretty lucky in that regard.
So you said about high school. So you had a very good start with your friends, the academics, your mum, and all your parents, but both your parents. So how do you think that you said it changed when you got to high school? What do you mean by it changed?
I think that the divide became bigger, and I started to notice more my differences, and I had to again fit into an even less cultivated learning environment. When you're in high school, it's literally just these mass bulk produced lessons designed to fit the most amount of people's brains, and I understand that. And like as a type of teacher myself, I understand that there's only so much time that you can cater to everybody. And my teachers, I had some really lovely teachers, but I think that made it harder. Like I definitely still struggled with procrastination and not being able to finish things, not being able to start things in primary school. But as a kid, like what are you doing? Like it was my creative stories or my one-page homework things. It didn't matter.
Yeah, it
and then at high school it started to matter.
Yeah.
And also I think the social side of the emotional regularity, the rejection sensitivity, that became a lot harder in high school, because I didn't have a core group where we were just together for everything. I had a group of friends that were still highly intelligent people and really big personalities, so still the outliers of the school environment. But I would come away with these thoughts like, gosh, I'm a lot for people. I'm too much for people. And also, where's the handbook, the social handbook? Why does everyone seem like they know this stuff? And I feel like I have to manually learn it. And I really, that thought kind of stayed with me. Even till now, I still struggle with, like, how do people just do these things? You know, they just know. I used to watch when people would put their sunglasses on and off because I didn't know when you were meant to. Just ridiculous little things like that other people weren't taught, and I felt like I had to learn manually.
Yeah, I like that social handbook. I've never heard of that. That's a really nice way to look at it. So how do you think that like with your different types of friends and things like that, and how did you kind of get through that?
Again, I had a bestie that was kind of by my side. So I had, no matter how much I felt I did or didn't fit in, I always knew there was someone in my court. And I think that really kind of kept me sane. And helped kind of balance the anxiety and the negative self-talk.
Okay. So what about like academics? Did you still thrive in high school?
I did and I didn't. I was still in the kind of top academic group for lower school. And I loved it. I loved learning. I think I like problem solving. And so when I was given those opportunities, and sometimes because we were in the kind of the extra, the top tier kind of group, we had different opportunities sometimes. And we didn't always have to learn in a traditional way. We were taken on tours and things like that. But in saying that, what I really started to hit was the executive functioning block. And what I thought was procrastination. Like, honestly, I've been trying to rethink my procrastination now and go, procrastination is when you're putting something off. And I don't think that's what we have as a problem with ADHD is we want to do it. We're trying to do it and we just can't. And so I started to hit those blocks. And of course, I was really hard on myself about them. And I think no one else noticed because I had these great expectations of myself. If there's a level where the teachers expected us to hit, I always had this above and beyond ideas for school assignments, projects. I'd get so excited and be like, I can do this and this and this. And then I'd leave it to the last minute because time blindness, because I couldn't get stuff done until it literally had to be done. And then in that time, maybe my natural brightness kind of served me and I would deliver what was expected, but it's not what I expected. And that disappointment really eats away at you. And after a while, like my attitude now that I'm having to unwork is I don't try new things because it sucks to be disappointed when you don't hit what you expect of it. And that's where that has gone, which I think is like really sad.
So it's kind of like what they expect, you expect more. So then you kind of lived up to what was expected. I'm doing that in inverted commas, what was expected. Yeah. But the disappointment that you
passed well.
Yeah. But then the disappointment with yourself is a total different thing. So how do you kind of cope with that now?
I think I express it more.
Okay.
And I've done a lot more mindfulness work. So I'm more present with my thoughts. I kind of go by that. Just because it's using my voice doesn't mean it speaks the truth.
Yes.
You know, that my thoughts are created from my history and they were there to help me and protect me, but they don't necessarily serve me now. So I try and counter them as much as I can. I try and be kind to myself when I change interests and with screenwriting, which is what my main passion is. And I'm trying, that's really hard because you're like, get into a film and you're writing the script and then suddenly you can't. So it's hard. I haven't got a solution, but I do try and be kind to myself when I hit that disappointment, block.
I think that's really nice, like be kind to yourself, because most people are the opposite. And you've got to remember that those irrational thoughts are there built up from the past, but they hopefully will, and give yourself some credit. We're never going to be perfect, even though we try, we want to be.
Yes. Yeah. Perfectionism is such a struggle every day.
Every day. So what happened after school, after high school? What was kind of the next step?
Yeah. I was really into acting. In high school, I found an external drama group, which again was a group of weirdos. There's a theme here.
I love this.
And the creative sorts and the alternative thinkers. And I fit in. And some of them are still my best friends to this day. And that's the place I work at. So the place I started doing drama lessons at 13 is the place I still work at 29. This is incredible. Like, they're like my family, my workplace. But I got a job straight out of school as an acting teacher, just starting with the little guys, just these really basic beginner films. And that was so wonderful for me. What I didn't realize at the time was these classes were after school. They were all practical based with a little bit of, theory in there, but very much the whiteboard and then we try it out type thing. And so I flourished in this space because I responded to the short time periods. I was able to think on my feet. I was able to be quick. And even now, like in my classes, we play with scenes and then we do redirects and we just try new things. And I love that. And I feel like I'm proud to say I think I'm quite good at that. And so I feel like I was very lucky. I got a job straight out of school that fed into what I was good at. And I did other little bits and pieces, acting work, promo gigs, and there were all these like 4-hour blocks or less. So there was nothing other than maybe the 6 months where I tried to go to uni, which was the biggest struggle.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so I was going to do a 4-year double major in film and theatre and and yeah, I did 6 months of it and it was just struggle town. I was focused. I could not focus. The things I loved the most were the tutes where we talk and we engage and we'd be a debate and back and forth, but everything else, lectures, essays, watching back lectures online. Oh my goodness, I just couldn't. Readings, these long readings. I really, really, really struggled and I felt really bad about that. But luckily, an opportunity came up to do a diploma of screen acting.
Oh, nice.
9 months. It was 3 days a week. It was the most incredible acting coach and amazing other teachers as well. And it was all practical. So we were just doing like scripts and accents. We went to the zoo and practiced being like animals, and it was just that was much more the style of learning that I responded to.
I think it's amazing that I have to stop you there to comment, but I have to think it's amazing that you didn't keep going. So you were confident enough to say, do you know what? No, it's not okay. And this is not the right thing for me. I'm going to go and do something else. I think that's really courageous.
I think if I look back, yeah, but they're definitely, I think it was this better opportunity has come up. And honestly, now I would love to do more study, but it's so daunting knowing how hard that was and knowing how many foundational units are in most studies and that so much is online at the moment.
Yeah,
I just know in myself that that's not the right learning for me. And I guess it is empowering in a way, and it is courage to be like, yeah, okay, this isn't for me, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but it is disappointing as well.
Yeah, the disappointment is, yeah, it is. And when you quit, it is not quit, but when you take that step back and say, no, this is not right, it is empowered, but it also, you have to respect the fact that it is a hit, isn't it, on yourself and on your emotions. I understand. I quit my master's, so I get
it. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do now?
So now I still teach, but I teach higher levels now. I do screenwriting where I get to write films for my work, which is absolutely amazing. That's only happened in the last year. And I work in casting. And that was the big shift because I only started that about 2 years ago. That was the shift that really made me realize where my weaknesses are at, because I hadn't had to sit down in front of a computer and work for long periods of time since uni. So that was a bit of a shock. And I think that's kind of, what led me to my diagnosis.
So what would you say when you started casting were your biggest challenges?
So for me, it was focus. being able to sit there and focus, and also to prioritize focus, because I don't think we've got an attention deficit. I think it's just the prioritizing of where our attention should be.
Yeah.
So my job is to take in a lot of emails, and to deal with a lot of different moving parts. I'm dealing with auditions, I'm dealing with actors' profiles, I'm dealing with casting briefs, I'm dealing with internal stuff, and stuff comes in all the time. And so every time my attention goes to the next thing, and I have to remember the previous one, and I have to decide in my head, what's the most important? What should I spend how much time on? And that I really, really struggled with. And I started to hit that feeling of overwhelm, which has kind of been a consistent thing in my life, but more often than I had been in a little while. And also, I think, memory as well.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Like memory retention, and also, yeah, I don't know. It was hard.
All the EFs just came back. All the executive functioning just came back.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
how do you kind of, you still do casting now? Is that correct? So how do you manage that now?
Yeah, I do. So I am trialing new things because I'm super new in my diagnosis. So it still is hard, but
Yeah.
I've got an amazing workplace. They're pretty flexible as far as my hours are concerned. I try to be kind on myself, and my brain is having those days where it just won't work. You stare at the screen, you're like, I opened this tab. Why did I open this tab? I was doing something. But I'm also trying things like, using like sensory objects just to engage that kind of hyperactivity part of me, the restless part, using music, and exploring medication as well, which I haven't been that lucky with yet, but I'm still open to kind of exploring it.
Okay, so we're getting more towards your diagnosis now. So do you want to tell us about kind of, obviously we've said it in your bio, it was 3 months ago. Do you want to kind of tell us kind of what led up to you actually going to get a diagnosis?
It was actually just a video on Facebook at 2 a.m. I was watching this video of this radio host, and she was making a joke about how she thought she used to have ADHD, but she doesn't anymore. And then her mum was like, no, you still have it. You don't lose it usually. And then she listed all the characteristics. She's like, I do this and this and this. And her coworkers are like, yeah, you do that. And they're all laughing. And I'm laughing like, oh, imagine. And then I was like, man, like all of those things kind of like resonate with me. Like, ooh. But surely not, because no one had ever told me in my conscious memory that I maybe have ADHD. It had never crossed my mind. For me, I had that stereotype in my head of that little boy, who is bouncing off the walls, who's naughty, who's misbehaving, who's all of those things. And I was like, well, I'm not those things. And then I went down the rabbit hole, as we've all been through.
We all did that, yeah.
Okay, what's the DSM diagnosis? What's all these little quizzes? What's these little bingo charts? What's everything I could read about it? And I started to sit more and more with like, oh my goodness, this actually might be me. And I've been seeing a psych for a while that I'm not seeing anymore for anxiety. And I had listed these specific symptoms that are huge flags of ADHD, and she'd never picked it up. And then I actually went to her in my next session. I said, I've been learning about ADHD and I think I might have it. And of course, you're really vulnerable in that place where you're like, oh my God, this is like my whole sense of self being shifted. And she pretty much shut me down. She said, oh, I don't think ADHD is even a brain thing. And honestly, you just use it as a crutch, and a few other things like that. And I left feeling so disheartened and questioning myself. And I'm quite stubborn, so I didn't give up completely. But it really, was a blow.
My mouth is literally open right now, and my fist is like this. That is actually infuriating. And she's meant to be a psychologist or psychiatrist where they're meant to know about these things. It's not even a brain thing. You're going to use it as a crutch. Wow.
Yeah. And I thought about it, and I put myself together, and I came back to her the next week and I said, look, even in these couple of weeks, I've been sitting with this as a potential label for me. And I know it's a label, and I know we are beyond these labels.
Yeah.
But even as I've been sitting with this, my self-talk has already started to change. The things that I thought of in myself as procrastination, as lazy, as not trying hard enough, as too much for people, suddenly these are things that maybe are part of my brain makeup, and maybe are things that are a little beyond my control. And my resistance to them and how hard I was on myself was actually making it harder for me to even cope with and work with them and, you know, do anything at all. So she was kind of like, oh, yeah, I can see that. But I still knew. I was like, this isn't in a supportive environment. And I've moved to somebody else. And she also admitted she didn't know a lot about it, but she was like, it's definitely a thing. And it's often, you know, I have heard that a lot of women and, you know, bright women often slip underneath the radar because your symptoms don't match up to what's out there, what's been studied and publicized.
It's really sad, isn't it, that so many people like yourself, myself, and many others get, misdiagnosed or things like that. So, going back to your before we start to go on about your ADHD, your anxiety, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, it was just my self-talk, and it was so much self-talk. And honestly, I feel like I did it as a result to kind of counterbalance my ADHD struggles, which again, I don't think is uncommon. Like I was shocked to learn that my friends thought of me as a person who's often late. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, I try so hard to be early, and I do all these things and I plan it. And then sometimes what happens is I'm too early, too ready. So then I don't want to think about it. So I'll do something else, and then I end up being late. And other things, like I use a calendar for everything, and I try and be really accountable with other people and connect with other people. So I was doing all these things, constantly working my mind to counterbalance the forgetfulness, the memory issues, the time blindness, the stuff that I'm learning is what we come with. It's part of the package deal. And so I think my anxiety was being treated at a surface level, but it was actually masking. It was the byproduct of my ADHD most of the time. And as well, I kind of knew that because I knew it wasn't the perfect fit, the label of anxiety for me. Yeah. Because I have a lot of friends who deal with anxiety, and they would talk about things like struggles in social interactions, struggling with shopping and struggling on the phone. And I am so extroverted and so social, and I think I get big dopamine hits from being around people, even at the supermarket, even randoms on the phone.
Love that.
I felt like, I'm not anxious like that. And a lot of my anxieties, my self-talk was either after the fact, which is more a rejection sensitivity end of things, or was in the planning stages of things, trying to keep control of my monkey brain.
Monkey brain. I love that. It's really sad how it's kind of anxiety, depression and things like that sometimes are the after effect of something else going on. And it's it's really real, but also really quite sad. But so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back after the break, and we're going to go more into what happened after Jessica was diagnosed. So join us back after the break. If you would like any information on Indigo's support group, check out the website below for our link to our Facebook page, or email at indigo.adhd2020@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments or feedback, or if you are interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out. either through the group or through our email. As said before, have a good week. Check in again later, Indigos. Shh, the Indigo Diaries. Hi, welcome back. We've refreshed with some drinks and ended up talking too long, as we always do. So welcome back, Jessica. And just before the break, we were talking with Jessica. If you don't know where we are right now, then rewind now. But I'll just give you a little bit. We were talking about Jessica, and she'd only just been diagnosed a few months ago. She'd been diagnosed with anxiety, but then moved to a new psychiatrist. And I think that's where we left off. So welcome back, Jessica, and carry on with your diary.
So what I thought was interesting, I know I'd said, so it was my psychologist that said those comments that were really harmful. And when I eventually found a psychiatrist, he said damaging comments as well. For me, I went to him and I had I gave him everything that I sat with, and he said, no, I think you definitely have attention deficit, the deficit part, but I don't know about the hyperactivity part. You'd probably be bouncing off the walls if you did.
Oh, that frustrates me so much, that comment.
And I just kind of, because I'm very passionate when I think something's being said wrong. I said to him, as nice as I could, well, I've learnt to mask. And also, if you got to know me, my hyperactivity manifests in ways like I'm always moving my feet. I call them my dancing feet. It's how I know I'm awake in the morning. I can't sleep in anymore. My feet start doing little like conductors movements.
I love that, dancing feet.
And when I'm feeling a lot of attention on me as well, or I'm feeling a bit anxious, my feet start moving. And I never knew why that was. My hands tap as well. My partner always says, you're always like tapping little, beats and whatnot on my hands when we're holding them, and a few other things like that. And I'm, constantly kind of moving and wiggling around and things, but I'm in a professional setting. I'm a 29-year-old woman. I have learnt ways to mask and to hold myself together when I'm in a professional environment. And so luckily he had also like this multi-choice quiz, which when he got that back, he was like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, you've got the hyperactivity part as well, significantly.
That's another stereotype, the hyperactivity. It goes when you're an adult. I have had many heated conversations when they say, but I can't see it. And it's like, yes, but we mask. That's what we've had to do. Yeah,
100%. And it's like, I don't know, just to judge you on that one instance, whereas in this quiz, it was things like, oh, do you always feel like, you're an engine running and things like that, and stuff that was more internal that maybe somebody wouldn't see at first impression, but you can feel it in you. For me, again, I was a bit annoyed by that, but I thought, okay, that's just representative of the general state of our kind of global understanding of ADHD. And it's been both frustrating to learn, because that's obviously, why it took me 29 years to get diagnosed, so I didn't present like that. But it is empowering as well, because I'm really excited. I feel like autism, the way we've understood autism, and how we're starting to see the nuances, and I watched a fantastic documentary about how it presents in women. I think we will start to get there with ADHD too. I feel like that's the next kind of movement.
100% agree with that. We know ASD, now we need ADHD. So how do you think, so coming from that, how do you think that your diagnosis is how do you feel about it?
I was just super hyped. I was like, yes, this is me. Oh my goodness, like how wonderful. This is my first impression, like how wonderful. I found this thing that explains me and fits me and means I am not failing. I'm not trying hard enough. It actually means that I work a little differently. Yes. And that has been such a weight off my shoulders. It hasn't been a crutch. It's been an empowerment. And so initially I was just so excited my struggle was that I want to talk about it, and I'm still kind of just in the end of that honeymoon phase of learning about it, and I want to talk about it with everybody all the time because it's the new special interest that I have learned, but nobody wants me to talk about it all the time. My poor partner gets like about 3 memes a day that are like ADHDisms.
I can relate to that, trust me. Still now.
Yeah, so in that regard, it was super empowering. I started to read up about techniques and started to see there were certain ones that I'd implemented before I even knew, and that was why they worked. Things like timers, things like reward systems, and even like for my forgetfulness, I've got things like where I'll put something in the way. I'll put like a shoe on top of my phone, and then I look at it in the morning, I'm like, why is there a shoe? Oh yeah, I need to fill up my petrol. And it's the weirdest, like...
That's brilliant. I love that.
But I'd done all these hacks on my own, and I, in a way, I felt quite proud of myself, because I thought, without any knowledge or any help, you've been managing this pretty well, and you have still been achieving things, and you've still been growing and learning. And this diagnosis only makes it easier for me to access like-minded individuals like your Indigo group, and resources so that I can continue that and not feel defeated when the neurotypical way of doing it doesn't work. Like, rather than a to-do list, which I used to have to-do list 20 items long, I now have a 3-item to-do list for my day, and it keeps it simple. I've got it on a big whiteboard, and I can see it wherever I move around the house, and I have a lot more techniques that are geared for me, so they work. And that's so wonderful to be like, oh gosh, I was just trying the wrong techniques. It wasn't made for me, so no wonder they didn't work.
I think it's really refreshing to hear this perspective, because it's just really amazing that you've just kind of took it under your wing, and you're like, do you know what? This explains a lot. I'm just going to go with it. Let's just come on. And it's like almost like you kind of not needed it, but kind of, like needed that to then be able to just go, do you know what? It's not me. There is something going on. It does explain it. It doesn't mean I have to make excuses, and give you the permission to then carry on.
Yeah, 100%. It's that self-kindness that I was really lacking. I have a lot of empathy for others, and I'd like to think I'm quite a kind and considerate person to others, because I hate when you are feeling like that. So I always think, if somebody else is feeling like I feel, what would they want me to do? Would they be feeling left out? I'll include them. Would they be feeling sad by that comment? I'll try and say something to make them feel better. But I didn't turn that same kindness to myself. I actually was so hard, and I still have to actively combat that every day. I'm so hard on myself. My perfectionism is off the charts. My shame and expectations of myself are really, really intense. And so it's just allowed me to start to counter that, to go, here's a thought. I'm too much for people, which I get regularly. Like I often feel like, oh my goodness, you just talk so much. And then they're all quiet. They think you're too loud and too intense and too passionate. And then I've countered it with, you're passionate and you're energetic and you're bringing life to this conversation. And maybe they were glad somebody else was talking, or if not, they're your friends and they understand you. And so I started to counter that self-talk and not expect myself to be a whole different person than I am. And of course, I'll never achieve that. So I've started to kind of become at peace with who I am a little more.
That's amazing. Like you kind of almost like flip the coin and kind of just keep going. So what about like telling people? Have you started to kind of, because obviously it's only been 3 months, but have you started to kind of express to other people that you have been diagnosed?
Yeah, literally everyone in my close circle heard within a week, because I couldn't not say anything. I was so hyped. So in some way or another, most of the people in my close circle have heard, and probably heard too much about it. But as much as I'm excited and hyped, I definitely, I really struggle. I feel so vulnerable. This process of unmasking and being my authentic self and not criticizing myself for being who I am, it's made me really, really vulnerable. And so I'll often on the surface appear really like it's all just amazing. And then I'll go home from an interaction where I have talked a bit about my ADHD, or I have told someone new, and I will feel so vulnerable and that emotional low, and sometimes a breakdown, because I just think, oh my goodness, like what if they don't like me now, or what if this is the final tipping point and I am, too much for people, and then they think I'm weird or something. And I am weird, and that's okay. I actually really like that about myself, but the negative self-talk spins it in a way that's like, no one's gonna like you because you're weird.
Yeah, it's like the spins, and it's like, you're like, yeah, I like it, and then you're like, no, you don't like it. It's not good for other people. It's like that devil and like demon, isn't it? So so you, after a while, I mean, I'm only speaking from my experience, I was also quite similar. And then after a while, it does start to go, but then, we're not perfect, are we? So how do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, I've got a new psych who's great, and I've been journaling a bit more. And usually what I do is I let myself feel the emotions. Like sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to have a cry on the way home because I just exposed a part of myself and no one said anything, or I said one thing wrong and I'm going to have a cry. But afterwards, I'm quite self-aware, so I'll look through it and I'll kind of try and reason and come to a more objective understanding of it. And then if there's still something that needs to be said, I'll try and communicate it to the other party. So this is with people that I trust, like my close friends. I try to say to them, hey, I was feeling a bit vulnerable and I might have been a bit off, and just so you know, this is what I'm going through. And every time they're amazing and supportive. Like I've got incredible friends. It's just my self-talk, my inner head that says like, maybe they hate you, maybe it's, it's all too much.
That RSD, hey?
Yeah. Struggle is real.
It really is, yeah. And I don't, yeah, so I just have to say, because the struggle is real every day. And I just, you go home and think about it for 6 hours, and then someone else is just carried on with a normal day. So how would you say, what about with your family? Have you kind of reached out to them and kind of spoke to your mom and your dad about kind of reflecting back onto your past kind of thing?
Yeah, I definitely have. And like a lot of other people, some family members, like about other people as well, go, oh, no, you're not. Like it's like you're saying you're sick or something. And you're like, no, it's not a bad thing. I'm not, it's not a problem. It's actually an understanding, a different understanding. So they'll say, no, you're not. You couldn't be, or we're all a little bit like that. And I'm like, yeah but is it chronic? Like, do you feel overwhelmed every day or week from different tasks that you cannot do despite how much you want to do them? So that's been a bit of an issue, but for the most part, they've been so supportive. My mum has said a few memories where she's like, oh yeah, you're always really loud and really energetic. But they didn't know what to look for. So I don't blame them because I didn't even know that was a thing until literally this year. So how could they have, in the 90s, known that these were how girls sometimes presented? And so it's been quite positive telling them, and it's kind of been me going, but see, did you see that thing that I do? I actually think possibly it's because of my ADHD.
You start to once you start to piece together your whole past, and sometimes you're like, oh, do you remember this? And people are like, no, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got a great one. When I was a kid, my mum thought that I was hard of hearing and took me to a hearing clinic multiple times because I always said what when she asked me something, and turns out I just never listened and I was just in my own world. And I just thought that's classic. I my auditory processing was just that beat too late. And she was like, oh no, something must be wrong. Like, which it kind of was, but it wasn't quite, my hearing. So I think that's really funny.
I think it's really quite amazing. Like if I was listening to this now, well, obviously I am listening, but you know what I mean? If I was listening to this now, like I wouldn't be able to believe that you were only diagnosed 3 months ago. I think it's really incredible how you kind of just took it on and took it through your wing and just kind of, obviously you've still got your struggles and you've still got your inner critic and things like that. But just hearing the way you talk about it and the way you express it is really rare and very quite, it's quite refreshing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I definitely blame the rabbit hole in part because I have immersed myself, but I also think it's due to being around other positive influences like yourself, where I get to see myself reflected in others. And that has kind of sped up that process of going, oh, okay, all right. And you have that thing where you're like, oh my God, I do that too.
Yeah.
Again and again and again. And that's been so inspiring. And it's balanced out the negative. And, it is rough going from a thing where you think, look, if I try hard enough, I'll eventually be able to be a whole different person and be able to be more focused and be less procrastinating and da-da-da-da. Whereas now I have to kind of come to the terms with the fact that this is my struggle for life, in the sense that in a neurotypical designed world, there will always be things that aren't catered to me, and I will always have to maybe work a little harder in certain aspects of my life. And that is confronting, but also seeing all the strengths and seeing the strengths in people like yourself. It's reminds me of what I've got as well.
Oh, you're making me blush. Thank you. It's about spinning, but then you've still got to kind of take on the challenges, but look at the strengths. There's two sides to every story, isn't there? So the kind of how's it kind of, you talked about having really good friendships and things like that. How's it kind of affected or impacted kind of your romantic, intimate relationships and your friendships as an adult?
Yeah, I think the rejection sensitivity and the maybe a little bit more manually learning social cues has meant that I have struggled a little bit with friendships as an adult. But then when I found my people, like I've got a great group of girls that I'm really close with from Lacrosse, and they're so wonderful. But at first when I was getting to know them, I was really sensitive. Like I'd be my full self, because especially in sport, it brings out that energy in me, and they're so fun and great. And then I'd go home and be like hypercritical and going, oh my gosh, I said this, or I did this, and they probably think this. And it's only through like time that it really has erased that. Like I couldn't help too much that those thoughts came. But like they're still sticking around. I live with one of them. So, that's kind of affirming.
I love that. They're sticking around. They're still here.
Yeah, so surely they bear me at the moment, at the least. No, I think they like me, I think. And then in intimate relationship with my partner, I have a long-term partner, 3 years, and he's been so great. I express... it's the ADHD diagnosis has given me better terms to express what's going on.
Okay.
So I can say to him, what's an example? In this moment, I'm feeling overstimulated. So just give me like 10, 15 minutes and then I'll feel like engaging again. And he'll go, okay, cool. What do you need? And support me through that. But it's also, rather than me just shutting down or just being really stroppy, I can actually use my words to say what it is, and he understands a little bit of what that means and can be there for me. So I think it's actually improved our relationship, because I found the words to articulate the things that I was finding hard, and then he can support me better through that. And also it's kind of understanding, how do we work around it? The things that maybe are difficult, that we come up against. There might be a challenge, I understand him a lot. Like, for instance, he's great. He works in his mind is in pictures, and he really thinks about things and is so respectful and listening. And I'm so impulsive and jumping in, da 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 da. So we have like a code word, which is just to stop and take a breather so that he can catch up. And then he knows as well, if I'm jumping in, it's not because I don't respect what he's saying, it's because I've like finished the sentence and then springboarded from that to something else, and then I'm replying to that, and then I know to explain maybe how I made that connection. So yeah, we're finding our workarounds.
That's brilliant. And I still, I'm laughing because I can relate to that a lot. You've just got to find that balance in it. I found that it was kind of like that, because you're accepting yourself, then it's easy, not easier, but then it's easy for you to then express it for them to kind of accept. And rather than trying to mask and say, I'll do that when you know you're not going to do it, that it's just that middle ground and you work to your strengths. And I absolutely love that you guys do that. That's absolutely Brit stop.
Yeah, it's pretty cute.
So so obviously that's impacted you in a very positive way in your relationship. So I remember you telling us, this is not really about ADHD, but I have to get this in here, about how you guys met. I just think this is brilliant. Oh,
I clocked him at a party when we were like, I don't know, 16, 17. I thought he was really cute. We only had MySpace, so I tried to search him on MySpace, but I couldn't because I only knew his last name. And then a few years later at a party, I was hitting it off with this guy, and I've got a terrible memory, especially for faces and stuff. So I'm like to my best friend, oh, this guy's pretty cute. And they're like, yeah, isn't it that guy that you like that you tried to search on MySpace? I was like, no, his name's this. And then I asked him his first name and his last name, and his last name was the name that I knew. And I was like, oh my God. And then, even then, we spent ages. Us were in the place to kind of be ready for. I was a lot less self-aware, as you are in your early 20s. Yeah. In that period, like I grew so much. I traveled, which again was very stimulating and ADHD friendly as a life experience, because every day is different. And I wasn't, so I really thrived in that traveling environment. I loved it. And then kind of, had other relationships and stuff, and came back more grounded person, and I think a better person to bring into a relationship, and he did the same. So lots of meetings later we're finally together, but I always say I clocked you first.
I just love that you clocked him, and it was like MySpace. It's just like hearing that MySpace, it just takes you back to like when we were teenagers.
I know it's such a different world.
Yeah, really. MySpace. Now everyone's got a phone and everything. So traveling, that's a really and obviously I'm very similar like that. And how do you think that kind of helped you in almost like with your ADHD, like kind of it gave you an outlet almost?
Yeah, that and like sport as well. I've always done lots of sports and exercise and stuff. Both of them I think have been outlets for my energy, mental stimulation, learning new things. I love like walking around a supermarket in a new country that I haven't been to and just noticing the different products. And, like it's just, I really thrive on learning. And so I think it was learning, but in a really practical way. Like I spent 5 years of primary school learning Japanese, right? All I could remember is 1 to 10 and hello. And my name is Jess. Then I did 3 months in Japan a few years ago. And I learned so much more. I wasn't, fluent or anything, but I picked up so much of the language because I was hearing it and it was being practically used. And so these kinds of things have taught me, and same as with sport as well. If my coach says to us, all right, we're doing this drill and we're going from cone A to cone B and we're going to go around and then shoot from C and then this, I just kind of like, I look like I'm listening because I'm really good at that, but I'm not. I can't take it in. I've learned that I can't process auditory instructions very well. I just can't picture them. But then I see it and then I do it and suddenly it clicks. And so these things have taught me how I learn. And so then I can say to someone, oh, you've just explained that to me, but can you put that in writing as well? Or can we walk through it? I had a games night last night and someone explained this game and I was zoned out halfway through and I thought, oh no, you're going to fail at this. And then we played the game and it was great and I clicked and I got it because we were doing it. And so I know in myself not to be hard again and that it's just that I have some strengths in what I can learn. I'm quite good at listening and kind of getting accents and languages. And there's some things that I'm not so good at. And just to kind of make sure that my learning caters to those styles more.
Wow, what a way to like be able to express yourself and say, you know, do you know what? That was okay, but could you just get it in this way and this way? And then it's like you kind of like utilizing your strengths and then you know what your challenges are. And now you're really like fulfilling your life. It's incredible. So what's the next step for you, Jessica? What's kind of the next step in your life? That's a very daunting question. Sorry, that was I just realized.
No pressure. Honestly, for me, like, with myself, my goal, I'm not really a goal-driven person, but if I had to say I had a goal, it would be to be kinder to myself, because that is still my hardest battle. And like I don't think people realize I've got this quote that says, just because someone carries it well doesn't mean it isn't heavy. And I feel like I often don't show how much I'm struggling. I'm quite private in my struggles. I don't like people to have to worry about me or feel bad or walk on eggshells or anything like that around me or cater to me. I always want to be the easiest, most convenient person in the room. But it means that I'm often going through stuff alone. So for me, being kinder to myself and then communicating my needs to others, like that, I think is going to be a big part of my journey going forward. And then using my strengths to continue to find work and improve myself in my career, especially my screenwriting. Like, I'm so passionate about it. It was the first thing I ever remember doing when I was a kid, is writing stories and doing little plays, but I never finished them. I could never finish them. And only just in the last year have I started to find strategies where I can pump out a script and finish it to a place that I'm pretty happy with. And not perfect, never perfect, but, you know. And so for me, it makes me hopeful moving forward that I can try new things and fail at them and move on to other things, but continue to grow. Like, that is really important to me, that I am empowered to continue doing the stuff I love, because it's not just the things you don't like doing with ADHD. Sometimes the struggles is, I love this so much and I still can't do it. And that sucks. And so that's something I want to work on for sure.
Wow, sorry, I'm just sat here like staring at you in awe, like just so smiling, because that was just absolutely like powerful. Very powerful. So nice. I think that's just such a unique and kind of way to move forward. I just think that's amazing. And growth, that's what it's all about. And the fact that you, even now, you still want to continue. So I'm going to ask you one more question before we kind of finish today. Any regrets? Sure. Any regrets about getting diagnosed before, or nah?
Look, I can't say, like, of course I would have loved to known this in a way. I would have loved to be nicer to myself throughout my whole life. My self-talk would have been maybe a lot easier, but I also wouldn't have been who I am today. I've got resilience and empathy, and I've got those strategies that I just had to kind of figure out. So, you know, I don't regret that, but I definitely, like, it is important to me. This is one of the reasons why I said yes to this, is because even though I might feel vulnerable and like people maybe will judge me if they hear me, I think it's so important that other people hear stories like mine, because if one more person like me gets diagnosed a bit earlier and we start to not judge the kids that present like me, you know, in my teaching, I'd even improve my teaching in how I look at my students and how I cater to them. Okay, this kid, we're doing a meditation, but they want to stand. Okay, well, they can stand. They're restless. They're they're still doing the task just in their own way. And so I want to allow that for others. And so it is sad, you know, any struggling is sad, any suffering is sad, but I'm who I am. And so maybe I needed, you know, this is exactly where I needed to be at this time. So I'm going to roll with that.
Wow. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you anymore. So as we come to the end of the diary, I just want to say how incredible it's been to have you on here, and very unique. Everyone is always very unique, but very rare for someone who's only been diagnosed 3 months ago to, well, from what I've seen from a lot of people, to firstly feel confident enough to come on here, but you're still smiling and you're so accepting of yourself and people around. I have to say I'm truly inspired by yourself. And I think many others will really be able to relate to that. And the fact that you even mentioned that that's one of the reasons why you came on is truly a noble thing. So is there anything that you would like to leave us with? Maybe an encouragement for people's week ahead?
I do have a quote that I would like to say. It's Rupi Kaur, and it's, "And here you are living despite it all."
Wow. That says it all. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
So yet again, we leave Indigos with another incredible story and someone else to be able to listen to and find some relation to your life. With this thought, I want to mention that we are all in every way very different, but in some ways very similar. And I hope you find some peace knowing that you're not alone in this journey that we call life. Please reach out if you need anything or want to share your story. So for another week, I want to say, have an honourable week and keep pushing through, just like Jessica has done her whole life. And so signing out, Indigos, and we're out.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Today is ending. I'll check in again tomorrow.
Tomorrow is a brand new beginning.
Good night, sweet dreams.
I think tomorrow will be